What if I told you that one of the most feared objects in America isn't locked away in some abandoned asylum or buried in an unmarked grave, but sits quietly in a glass case in Connecticut, waiting? This is the story of Annabelle, not the grotesque porcelain figure from Hollywood, but a simple Raggedy Ann doll that became a doorway to something far more sinister, an innocent beginning. The year was 1970. Donna, a nursing student, received what seemed like a thoughtful birthday present from her mother, a classic Raggedy Ann doll with yarn hair, button eyes, and a triangular nose. It was the kind of nostalgic gift that might remind someone of simpler times of childhood innocence. Donna shared an apartment with her roommate Angie, and they placed the doll on a chair, thinking nothing more of it. But within days, that innocent doll would become the center of a nightmare that would challenge everything they thought they knew about reality. When objects move, the first signs were subtle enough to dismiss. Donna and Angie would leave the apartment with Annabelle sitting in one position, only to return and find her arranged differently. An arm that had been down was now raised. Legs that were straight were now crossed. These were small changes, the kind you might attribute to memory playing tricks. But the movements escalated. They began leaving Annabelle on Donna's bed in the bedroom. When they returned home with all doors and windows locked, they would find the doll sitting upright on the living room couch. This wasn't a matter of misremembering or someone moving it slightly. This was the doll traveling across rooms, through closed doors, positioning itself as if it were alive. The two young women tried to rationalize it. Perhaps one of them had moved it and forgotten. Perhaps there was an explanation they just hadn't thought of yet. But deep down, they knew something was terribly wrong. Messages from beyond. Then came the notes. Donna and Angie started discovering small pieces of parchment paper scattered around their apartment. On these papers were messages written in childish, shaky pencil strokes. The notes were simple but disturbing. Help us and help Lou. Here's where the situation became truly bizarre. Neither Donna nor Angie owned parchment paper. They had no such material in their apartment. So where were these notes coming from? And who or what was writing them? The Lou referenced in the messages was their friend, a man who had been skeptical of the paranormal from the start. Unlike Donna and Angie, who tried to find logical explanations, Lou felt something deeply wrong about the doll from the moment he first saw it. He experienced an inexplicable sensation of dread whenever he was near Annabelle. He urged Donna to get rid of it, warning her that the doll was evil. His instincts, it turned out, were tragically accurate, seeking answers. Frightened and desperate for understanding, Donna and Angie made a decision that would change everything. They contacted a psychic medium to conduct a séance in their apartment, hoping to discover what was happening. During the séance, the medium delivered a story that seemed to explain the phenomena. She told them that long before their apartment building existed, a 7-year-old girl named Annabelle Higgins had died on that very property. Her spirit had been wandering the grounds for years, lonely and lost. When the doll appeared in the apartment, the spirit felt drawn to it. Here was something she could inhabit, something that could give her form and presence again. The medium explained that the spirit of little Annabelle Higgins simply wanted to be accepted, to have friends. She wasn't trying to frighten anyone. She was reaching out in the only way she knew how. Moved by compassion, Donna, whose nurturing instincts as a nursing student ran deep, made what paranormal investigators would later call a catastrophic mistake. She gave the spirit permission to inhabit the doll. She told the entity it could stay. By offering this invitation, Donna had unknowingly opened a door that should have remained locked. The attacks begin. After the séance, the situation transformed from unsettling to dangerous. Lou, the skeptical friend who had always distrusted the doll, became the primary target of what came next. One night, he woke from a nightmare so vivid and terrifying that the line between sleep and waking seemed to dissolve. In the dream, he was being strangled, unable to breathe, his chest constricted by an invisible force. As consciousness returned, he looked down at his chest and saw the Annabelle doll sitting there, staring at him with those button eyes. He tried to move, tried to scream, but found himself completely paralyzed. The sensation of being choked intensified. He was convinced he was dying, that whatever inhabited that doll was killing him. Then, suddenly, he blacked out. The next morning, Lou was convinced it hadn't been merely a dream. The terror had been too real, too physical. But his worst encounter was still to come. A few days later, Lou and Angie were alone in the apartment, planning a road trip. As they discussed their itinerary, they heard sounds coming from Donna's bedroom, rustling movement, as if someone were in there. Fearing an intruder had broken in, Lou cautiously approached the closed bedroom door. He slowly turned the handle and pushed it open, flipping on the light switch. At first glance, everything appeared normal. The room was empty, but then he noticed the doll. Annabelle, who was usually positioned on the bed, was now sitting in the far corner of the room, as if she had moved there to watch the door. As Lou stepped toward the doll, he felt a sudden burning sensation on the back of his neck, the distinct feeling of someone standing directly behind him, breathing down his neck. He spun around quickly, but the doorway was empty. No one was there. Then came the pain. A searing, intense agony exploded across his chest. Lou looked down and saw blood soaking through his shirt. He lifted the fabric and discovered something that would defy medical explanation. 7 distinct claw marks carved into his chest, 3 vertical slashes and 4 horizontal ones. The wounds looked as if they had been burned into his skin with a hot iron. They were deep, bleeding profusely, and arranged in a pattern that seemed almost deliberate. Yet within 2 days, those severe wounds had healed almost completely, leaving virtually no scarring. The rapid healing was as inexplicable as the wounds themselves. This was the moment everything changed. No more rationalizations. No more attempts to explain away the phenomena. Whatever they were dealing with, it was malevolent, it was powerful, and it wanted to hurt them. Enter the Warrens. Terrified for their safety and their lives, Donna and Angie finally accepted that they needed help beyond what conventional thinking could provide. They contacted a priest who recognized the severity of the situation and immediately put them in touch with Ed and Lorraine, Warren renowned demonologists who had investigated hundreds of paranormal cases. When the Warrens arrived at the apartment, they brought decades of experience dealing with the supernatural. Lorraine, a gifted clairvoyant, immediately sensed the oppressive dark energy that permeated the space. Ed, with his theological training and practical experience with demonic phenomena, recognized the classic signs of what he termed an infestation. After interviewing Donna, Angie, and Lou, and examining the evidence of what had occurred, the Warrens delivered a conclusion that was both shocking and, in its way, expected. There was no ghost of Annabelle Higgins. There had never been a 7-year-old girl who died on the property. The story told by the medium during the séance had been a complete fabrication. What they were dealing with was a demonic entity, the nature of evil. The Warrens explained the mechanics of what had happened. Spirits of deceased humans do not possess inanimate objects like dolls or furniture. That's not how the spiritual world operates. However, demonic entities and human spirits that have never lived as humans can attach themselves to objects. They use these objects as conduits, as anchors in the physical world from which they can launch attacks and create terror. The demon had created an elaborate deception. By pretending to be the spirit of a lonely little girl, it had evoked sympathy and compassion. This was a calculated strategy with a specific goal: to receive permission to enter their lives. In many religious and spiritual traditions, malevolent entities require some form of invitation or permission to fully manifest their power. By granting the spirit permission to inhabit the doll, Donna had inadvertently given the demon exactly what it needed: the doll's movements, the mysterious notes, the escalating phenomena. These were all part of what demonologists call the infestation phase. The entity was making its presence known, establishing its power, and creating an atmosphere of fear and confusion. But the doll was never the ultimate goal. The demon's true target was Donna's soul. The doll was merely the vehicle, the tool through which it could work toward eventual possession of a human being. The exorcism and the journey home. Ed Warren performed an exorcism ritual in the apartment, cleansing the space of the demonic presence. For the safety of everyone involved, the Warrens made the decision to take the doll with them. It needed to be contained, kept away from unsuspecting people who might fall victim to the same deception that had ensnared Donna and Angie. What should have been a simple drive home became one of the most harrowing experiences of the Warrens' long career. With the Annabelle doll wrapped and placed in the back seat of their car, Ed drove cautiously. But the entity wasn't finished causing havoc. The car's engine stalled repeatedly, forcing Ed to restart it again and again. The power steering suddenly failed, making the vehicle difficult to control. Most terrifyingly, the brakes gave out multiple times, particularly on dangerous curves where a crash could have been fatal. Ed had to pull over to the side of the road. He took out a vial of holy water he always carried and sprinkled it over the doll, speaking prayers of protection and binding. Only after this intervention were they able to complete the journey home without further incident. But even arriving at the Warrens' home didn't end the doll's reign of terror. Continued manifestations. In the Warrens' house, the doll continued to demonstrate the power of the entity attached to it. Lorraine would find it levitating in different rooms. It would appear in places it couldn't possibly have reached on its own. The air around it remained cold, and sensitive individuals reported feeling watched, threatened, even when the doll was out of sight. One incident stands out as particularly illustrative of the danger the doll posed. A priest came to visit the Warrens, and during the visit, he was shown the Annabelle doll. Unlike most visitors, who approached with caution and respect for its dark history, this priest was dismissive. He laughed at the stories, mocked the idea that a doll could be dangerous. In a gesture of contempt, he picked up the doll and said, "You're just a doll, Annabelle. You can't hurt anyone." Ed Warren warned him to be careful, to treat the object with respect, but the priest waved off the concern. On his drive home later that day, the priest's brakes failed. His car went out of control, and he was involved in a serious accident. The vehicle was completely totaled. He survived, but barely. The crash should have killed him. After recovering, the priest called Ed Warren and apologized. He had learned, in the most terrifying way possible, that the warnings about Annabelle were not superstition or exaggeration. The Occult Museum. Recognizing that the doll posed an extreme and ongoing danger, the Warrens commissioned a special containment case. Built of glass and blessed by a Catholic priest, the case is inscribed with the Lord's Prayer. A warning label on the case reads, "Positively do not open." The doll was placed in this case and housed in the Warrens Occult Museum at their home in Monroe, Connecticut. The museum contains dozens of cursed objects, haunted artifacts, and items used in occult rituals that the Warrens collected over their decades of investigating paranormal phenomena. But Annabelle remains one of the most dangerous items in the entire collection. The case is blessed regularly to maintain the spiritual protections that keep the demon contained. The entity is still attached to the doll. Exorcisms can drive demons away from people, but objects present a more complicated challenge. The goal isn't to destroy the doll or banish the demon permanently, but to keep it contained and away from potential victims. Visitors to the museum are strictly warned never to touch the case, never to tap on the glass, and certainly never to open it. There are stories, perhaps apocryphal, perhaps not, of visitors who mocked the doll or challenged it, only to die in mysterious accidents shortly after leaving the museum. The reality behind the horror. Today, the real Annabelle doll remains in that glass case. It looks nothing like the terrifying porcelain figure portrayed in the horror films bearing its name. It's simply a Raggedy Ann doll, faded, well-worn, with soft fabric and button eyes. To someone unfamiliar with its history, it might seem charming, even comforting in its vintage simplicity. But those who know the truth see something else when they look at Annabelle. They see evidence that evil doesn't always announce itself with fangs and horns. Sometimes it comes disguised as something innocent, something meant to comfort and bring joy. The story of Annabelle serves as more than just a ghost story to tell around campfires. It's a cautionary tale about the unseen world that exists alongside our own, about forces and entities that most people never encounter but that are nonetheless real. It's a reminder to be cautious about what we invite into our lives, even especially when those invitations seem harmless. Donna's compassion, her desire to help what she believed was a lonely child's spirit, is understandable and even admirable. But it demonstrates how good intentions can be manipulated by malevolent forces. The demon knew exactly what emotional buttons to push, what story to tell to gain entry. Questions that remain. The Annabelle case raises profound questions that extend beyond the specific incidents in that apartment in 1970. Can inanimate objects truly serve as vessels for malevolent entities? If so, how many such objects exist in the world, sitting unrecognized in attics, antique shops, and homes? The Warrens Occult Museum contains hundreds of such items, each with its own dark history. How many more are out there, waiting? Why do some people seem more susceptible to paranormal phenomena than others? Lou sensed something wrong with the doll from the beginning, while Donna and Angie remained open to the idea that it might be benign. Was Lou simply more intuitive, or was he specifically targeted because his skepticism made him a challenge for the entity? And perhaps most unsettling, if the demon is still attached to the doll, contained but not banished, what happens if those protections ever fail? What happens if the case is opened, if the prayers fade, if someone foolish or malicious releases what's been so carefully imprisoned? The legacy. The Annabelle doll has become a cultural phenomenon, spawning movies, books, and countless discussions about the paranormal. The Hollywood version has taken liberties with the story, transforming the simple Raggedy Ann into a far more sinister-looking porcelain doll, adding fictional elements and supernatural occurrences that never happened. But the real story, the actual events that occurred in that apartment in 1970, the wounds on Lou's chest, the levitations, the car accidents. These need no embellishment. The truth is disturbing enough. Ed Warren passed away in 2006, and Lorraine died in 2019, but their work continues. The Occult Museum remains, though it's currently closed to the public, and Annabelle remains in her case, a silent testament to their most famous investigation. Those who work with the museum maintain the regular blessings of the case. They've reported that even now, decades after the doll was first contained, visitors sometimes experience unsettling feelings when standing before it. Cameras malfunction. People feel dizzy or nauseous. The temperature drops noticeably near the case. The doll itself, by all accounts, occasionally changes position within the case, though the case has never been opened. It's as if the entity is still there, still aware, still waiting. A final warning: the next time you see a vintage Raggedy Ann doll at an estate sale or antique shop, you might pause for a moment. You might wonder about its history, about the hands that held it, about whether it's merely a relic of childhood innocence or something more. The lesson of Annabelle isn't that every old doll is dangerous, or that the paranormal lurks behind every unexplained occurrence. Most strange experiences have mundane explanations. Most dolls are just dolls. But the case of Annabelle reminds us that we live in a world where materialism and rationality don't have all the answers. There are phenomena that science cannot yet explain, forces that operate by rules we don't fully understand, and sometimes evil finds a way into our world through the most unexpected channels. Donna, Angie, and Lou learn this lesson in the most terrifying way possible. They survived their encounter, but they were forever changed by it. They had looked into something dark and ancient, something that wanted to destroy them, and they had barely escaped. The Annabelle doll serves as physical proof of their experience and as a warning to anyone tempted to dismiss the possibility that such things exist. In the end, perhaps that's the most important message: respect the unknown. Be cautious about what you invite into your life. And if something feels wrong, if your instincts scream danger even when your rational mind can't explain why, listen to those instincts. They might just save your life.